The gladiator's defiance. The roar of 10,000 alien voices shook the crystalline walls of the underground arena, their bloodthirsty cheers echoing through the vast cavern carved deep beneath planet Xerion's surface. Purple bioluminescent fungi lined the ceiling like twisted stars, casting an eerie glow over the blood-soaked sand below. In the center of this hellish coliseum, Marcus Kane stood breathing heavily, his human lungs burning from the toxic atmosphere, his makeshift armor, scavenged, pieces of metal and bone, hung in tatters around his muscular frame. Dark blood stained his arms and chest, though most of it belonged to the creatures he'd been forced to kill. Around him lay the corpses of his latest opponents, a six-legged beast with razor claws, two insectoid warriors whose green ichor still pooled in the sand, and a hulking brute with stone-like skin that had taken everything Marcus had to bring down. For 3 months, he'd fought in these pits. 3 months since his transport ship had been captured by Overlord Vectus's raiders while delivering medical supplies to the outer colonies. 3 months of being treated like an animal, forced to kill or be killed for the entertainment of alien nobles who viewed humans as nothing more than exotic pets. But today was different. Today marked the end of the grand tournament, and somehow, impossibly, Marcus had survived every trial. He was the last one standing. The crowd's roar died to a murmur as a massive figure rose from the obsidian throne overlooking the arena. Overlord Vectus stood nearly 8 feet tall, his reptilian features marked by centuries of conquest. Scales the color of dried blood covered his hide, and 4 yellow eyes burned with cruel intelligence. Golden armor adorned with the bones of defeated enemies proclaimed his status as the undisputed ruler of this sector. Silence! Vectus's voice boomed through hidden speakers, amplified by alien technology. The arena fell deathly quiet. Human. Gladiator, you have done something remarkable today. You have survived the grand tournament, the first of your pathetic species to do so. Marcus said nothing, his jaw clenched tight. He'd learned long ago that showing defiance openly only brought more pain. But inside, his anger burned like a star-going nova. Vectus descended the steps slowly, savoring the moment. For this achievement, you have earned a reward. Guards. 2 sets of heavy doors groaned open on opposite sides of the arena. Through each emerged a pair of armored guards dragging chains behind them. At the end of those chains stumbled 2 figures that made Marcus's blood run cold. Both were clearly prisoners, both female, both bearing the marks of prolonged captivity. But that's where the similarities ended. The first had skin like polished crystal, translucent with veins of blue light pulsing beneath the surface. Her hair fell in silver cascades around a face that would have been beautiful if not for the purple bruises marking her cheek. Despite her obvious weakness, she held herself with dignity, her luminous eyes scanning the arena with intelligence rather than fear. Her simple white garment was torn and stained, but she moved with the grace of nobility. The second prisoner was her complete opposite. Where the first was ethereal, this one was fierce. Her skin bore intricate metallic markings that seemed to shift and flow like living tattoos across her dark flesh. Her black hair was cropped short and practical, and her amber eyes burned with barely contained rage. Even chained and obviously mistreated, she moved like a predator, her muscles coiled and ready to strike. Scars crisscrossed her arms, not from torture but from battles long past. Both women were dragged to the center of the arena and forced to their knees beside Marcus. Neither cried out, neither begged. Their silence spoke of strength that even months of imprisonment couldn't break. Overlord Vectus's yellow eyes gleamed with sadistic pleasure. Your reward, human, is choice. These 2 are among my finest acquisitions. The crystal-skinned one is from the healing worlds of Lumenis. Her people possess knowledge of medicine and genetics that could extend your miserable life by centuries. The dark one is a warrior from the fire moons of Carax, trained from birth to kill. Both have unique qualities that make them valuable. Marcus felt sick. He understood now. This wasn't a reward. It was another form of torture, designed to force him to participate in the very system that had enslaved them all. Choose one, Vectus continued, his forked tongue flicking out to taste the air. She will serve you faithfully as your personal slave. The other returns to my private collection, where she will remain until she breaks or dies. Choose wisely, human. This generosity will not be offered again. The crowd leaned forward in anticipation. Betting pools opened among the nobles as they wagered on which prisoner the human would select. Some called out suggestions, their alien voices harsh and cruel. Marcus looked at both women. The crystal-skinned one, despite her obvious pain, met his gaze steadily. There was no pleading there, no desperation, just a quiet resignation mixed with something that might have been hope. The warrior woman refused to look at him at all, her eyes fixed on Vectis with pure hatred. Neither deserved this fate. Neither deserved to be treated as property to be awarded like a trophy. The arena held its breath. Marcus straightened to his full height, ignoring the ache in his ribs and the burning in his lungs. When he spoke, his voice carried clearly across the silent space. I choose both. The words hit the arena like a physical blow. Conversations stopped mid-sentence. Overlord Vectis's four eyes widened in genuine surprise. Even the two prisoners looked up at him in shock. What did you say? Vectis's voice dropped to a dangerous whisper. Marcus took a step forward, his hands steady, despite the adrenaline coursing through his veins. I said I choose both. I won your tournament. I survived every trial you threw at me. I fought your monsters, your warriors, your beasts. If I've earned a reward, then I deserve better than being forced to abandon one person to save another. Murmurs rippled through the crowd like wildfire. In 3 centuries of gladiatorial games, no one had ever challenged the rules. No one had ever dared to negotiate with Overlord Vectis. The reptilian overlord's scales shifted color, darkening to deep crimson, a sign of rising fury. You forget your place, human. You were given a choice between 2 prizes. Do not mistake my generosity for weakness. I don't see prizes, Marcus replied, his voice growing stronger. I see people. I see 2 individuals who've been chained and caged and treated like animals. That ends here. For the first time since being dragged into the arena, the crystal-skinned woman looked directly at him. Her luminous eyes widened slightly and something flickered in their depths. Surprise, yes, but also something else. Recognition, perhaps. Or hope. The warrior woman's head turned as well, her amber gaze studying him with new intensity. Her expression didn't soften, but the hatred there seemed to shift, redirecting itself away from him and back toward their captors. Overlord Vectis descended another step, his clawed hands flexing. You dare mock me in front of my guests? You dare question the traditions of my arena? Your traditions are built on suffering, Marcus shot back. I didn't come here to perpetuate that. I came here to survive, and survival means not leaving people behind when you have the power to save them. The silence that followed was deafening. Every eye in the arena was fixed on the small group in the center of the blood-soaked sand. The tension was so thick it seemed to press against Marcus's chest like a physical weight. Then Vectis began to laugh, a sound like grinding stone that sent chills down Marcus's spine. Admirable, human. Foolish, but admirable. You speak of power, but you have none here. You are still my property, just as they are. Guards! Armored figures began moving down from the stands, weapons drawn. But Marcus had not survived 3 months in this hell by giving up when things looked impossible. Wait! Called out a new voice from the crowd. An elderly alien with moth-like wings fluttered down from the noble section. Overlord Vectis, if I may? Vectis's eyes narrowed. Speak quickly, Counselor Thex. The moth creature's antennae twitched nervously. The human raises an interesting point. He did complete the grand tournament, something no one has accomplished in decades. Perhaps the rules should reflect the magnitude of this achievement. Other voices began to murmur agreement from the stands. Marcus realized that some of the nobles were actually interested in seeing how this played out. To them, it was just another form of entertainment. Vectis studied the crowd, then looked back at Marcus. When he spoke again, his voice carried the cold calculation of a predator. Very well, human. You want both prizes? Then earn them. I will give you one more trial, one final test. Survive it, and both slaves are yours. Fail, and all three of you die slowly for my amusement. Marcus felt the weight of the moment settling on his shoulders. He'd just doubled down on an impossible bet with the lives of two strangers. But as he looked at them, the crystal-skinned healer and the fierce warrior, he saw something in there, eyes that made the choice worthwhile. They weren't looking at him like he was their savior. They were looking at him like he was their partner in this fight. What's the trial? Marcus asked. Vectus's grin revealed rows of needle-sharp teeth. Something special, something I've been saving for a worthy opponent. He raised his hand, and new gates began to grind open around the arena's perimeter. Let's see how your noble intentions fare against the Void Seekers. The temperature in the arena dropped 10 degrees as shadows began pouring through the gates. Living darkness that moved with predatory intelligence. Marcus felt ice form in his veins as he recognized what was coming. Void Seekers. Creatures of pure hunger that existed in the spaces between realities. Things that fed on life itself and left nothing but empty husks behind. He'd just signed all their death warrants. But as the crystal-skinned woman struggled to her feet beside him and the warrior woman tested the strength of her chains, Marcus realized something important. He wasn't facing this alone anymore. For the first time in 3 months, he wasn't fighting just to survive. He was fighting for something worth dying for. The escape through fire, the Void Seekers moved like liquid shadow. Across the arena floor, their forms constantly shifting between solid and ethereal. Marcus had heard stories about these creatures during his military service. Nightmares whispered by deep space scouts who'd encountered them in the dark between stars. They were living hunger, entities that existed to consume life force itself, leaving behind nothing but withered husks. Now 3 of them circled the small group in the center of the arena, their eyeless forms somehow still managing to convey predatory intelligence. The temperature continued to drop as they fed on the ambient energy in the air, and Marcus could see his breath forming small clouds of vapor. The chains, he said urgently to the 2 women beside him. We need to get you free. The crystal-skinned woman, he still didn't know her name, looked up at him with those luminous eyes. I am called Zira, she said, her voice melodic despite their dire circumstances. And I must tell you something important about... Save the introductions, the warrior woman interrupted, her amber eyes never leaving the approaching Void Seekers. I'm Kess, and if we're going to die together, we should at least know how to fight as a team. Marcus grabbed the chain connecting Zira's wrists and examined the locking mechanism, alien design, but the principle was the same. A magnetic coupling that required a specific frequency to release. He looked around desperately for anything that might help. The first Void Seeker struck without warning, flowing across the sand, like spilled ink. Marcus threw himself sideways, pulling Zira with him as tendrils of living darkness slashed through the space where they'd been standing. Where the creature's touch met the arena wall, the stone aged centuries in seconds, cracking and crumbling to dust. Their touch drains life, Zira gasped as they rolled to avoid another attack. But they're vulnerable to concentrated energy, light, heat, electrical discharge. Kess had managed to loop her chain around one of the Void Seeker's appendages, but instead of being able to use it as a weapon, she found herself being drained. The metallic markings on her skin began to dim as the creature fed on her life force. Let go, Marcus shouted, but Kess gritted her teeth and held on. The arena lighting, she said through clenched teeth. The bioluminescent fungi, they respond to bioelectrical fields. If we can overload them. Marcus understood immediately. He grabbed a fallen piece of metal from his destroyed armor and jammed it into the magnetic lock on Zira's chains. The coupling sparked and released, freeing her hands. She immediately placed her palms on the arena floor, and the veins of light beneath her crystalline skin began to pulse more rapidly. I can channel energy, she said, her voice strained with concentration. But I need a conduit, something to amplify and direct it. The second Void Seeker was closing in fast, its form expanding and contracting like a malevolent heartbeat. Marcus freed Kess's chains just as the creature reached them, and she rolled away from its draining touch with practiced grace. The weapon, racks. Kess pointed to the edge of the arena where various gladiatorial weapons were displayed. Some of those blades are made from crystallized lightning. They'll conduct energy. But the weapon racks were 50 meters away, and 3 Void Seekers now stood between them and any hope of proper armament. The crowd above had gone silent, watching the drama unfold with fascination. Even Overlord Vectus leaned forward on his throne, his yellow eyes gleaming with interest. Marcus made a decision. "Zira, how much energy can you channel through me?" Her luminous eyes widened. "Through you? That's impossible. You're not crystalline. You don't have the proper cellular structure to—" "Try it anyway," he said, grabbing her hand. "Kess, when I give the signal, run for those weapons. Don't look back." The moment Zira's hand touched his, Marcus felt electricity course through his nervous system. It should have killed him instantly. The amount of energy she was channeling was enough to power a small starship. Instead, he felt it flowing through him like water through a pipe, seeking an outlet. His body began to glow with the same blue light that pulsed beneath Zira's skin, and suddenly the bioluminescent fungi overhead began responding to their combined bioelectrical field. The purple glow intensified, brightening until it was almost blinding. The Void Seekers recoiled, their forms becoming less solid in the sudden flood of light. Marcus felt the energy building to a crescendo. "Now!" he shouted. Kess sprinted toward the weapon racks as Marcus and Zira released the accumulated energy in a massive burst. Lightning arced from their joined hands to the ceiling, and every piece of bioluminescent fungi in the arena exploded into brilliant radiance. The Void Seekers shrieked, a sound like reality tearing, and fled back toward the gates they'd emerged from. But the effort had cost them. Zira collapsed, her crystalline skin now pale and dim. Marcus felt like he'd been struck by lightning from the inside out, every nerve ending screaming in protest. And worst of all, alarms were now blaring throughout the complex. "Emergency containment breach," an automated voice announced in multiple alien languages, all sectors initiating lockdown protocols. Overlord Vectus was on his feet, roaring orders at his guards. "Seal the arena. Don't let them escape. I want them taken alive." Kess returned with an armload of weapons, crystallized lightning blades, plasma disruptors, and something that looked like a rifle designed for a creature with 4 arms. "Can you move?" she asked Zira. "I can try," Zira said weakly, accepting Marcus's help to stand. "The service tunnels," Marcus said, remembering the arena's layout from his months of imprisonment. "They use them to transport gladiators and clean out the dead. If we can reach the lower levels." Heavy blast doors were already descending around the arena's perimeter, but Marcus spotted a maintenance hatch near the weapon racks that the automated systems hadn't sealed yet. They ran for it as armed guards poured into the arena from above. The hatch led to a narrow service corridor that reeked of blood and disinfectant. Emergency lighting cast everything in harsh red, and the constant blare of alarms made communication difficult. They moved as quickly as Zira's weakened condition would allow, following the corridor as it branched and twisted through the underground complex. "This way leads to the detention levels," Marcus said, consulting his mental map of the facility. "If we can reach the transport bays—" "Wait," Zira said, stopping suddenly. She placed her hand against the corridor wall, and her skin began to glow faintly again. "There's something else. Something I need to tell you both." Kess kept watch while Zira gathered her strength to speak. "I'm not just from Lumenis," Zira said. "I'm heir to the Crystal Throne, what's left of it after Vectus conquered our system. But more than that, I carry something in my genetic code. A key." "A key to what?" Marcus asked. "An ancient defense network. My ancestors were part of a coalition that built it millennia ago, before the current galactic powers rose to dominance. The network was designed to protect refugee worlds, places where the displaced and enslaved could find sanctuary." Kess frowned. "If such a thing existed, why haven't we heard of it?" "Because it's been dormant for 1,000 years, Zira explained. "The activation codes were split among different bloodlines to prevent any one power from controlling it. I carry one half of the code, Marcus felt a chill that had nothing to do with their recent encounter with the Void Seekers. And the other half? Zira looked directly at Kes. The Fire Moons of Karax weren't always a warrior culture. They were originally the guardians of the second key. Kes stepped back as if she'd been struck. That's impossible. My people's history goes back 15 generations. We've always been fighters, always been protecting something, Zira finished gently. The reason your people developed such fierce warrior traditions was to guard the genetic heritage they carried. You're not just a soldier. Kes, you're a living key. The sound of approaching footsteps echoed through the corridor. They were running out of time. Even if that's true, Marcus said, what does it matter now? We're trapped in an underground complex with an army hunting us. It matters because the central control node for the defense network is here, Zira said. Vectis built his arena complex on top of an ancient site. He probably doesn't even know what he's sitting on. Heavy boots thundered in the distance, getting closer. They had to move. The trio pressed deeper into the service tunnels, following Zira's instinctive sense of direction as she guided them toward what she claimed was the entrance to the ancient facility. The corridors grew older as they descended, the metal walls giving way to stone carved with symbols that predated current galactic civilization. They reached a heavy door marked with warnings in a dozen languages. Beyond it, a vertical shaft dropped into darkness. The transport pods, Marcus said, recognizing the setup. They used these to move prisoners between levels. But as they prepared to descend, an explosion shook the complex above them. Dust rained from the ceiling, and the emergency lighting flickered. They're bringing in heavy weapons, Kes observed grimly. Vectis really doesn't want us to escape. Marcus was about to respond when the blast doors at the far end of the corridor burst open. Elite guards in power armor poured through, their energy weapons already charging. Down the shaft, he shouted, but as they prepared to jump, a second explosion, much closer this time, sent a shockwave through the facility. The transport pod cables snapped, and the shaft filled with debris. They were trapped between the approaching guards and a potentially fatal drop into darkness. There, Zira pointed to an emergency access panel in the wall. Manual maintenance tunnels. They'll be narrow, but we might be able to. The panel exploded outward as a blast from an energy rifle struck it. The guards were within range now, and their armor made them nearly unstoppable in direct combat. Marcus made a desperate decision. He grabbed one of the crystallized lightning blades and turned to face the guards while Zira worked frantically to open another access point. I'll buy you time, he said. No, Kes said firmly, moving to stand beside him with her own weapon ready. We do this together, remember? For a moment that lasted an eternity, Marcus saw something pass between the three of them. A recognition that they'd crossed a line they could never uncross. They weren't just three escaped prisoners anymore. They were something new. Something that hadn't existed before. They were a team. Then the access panel opened, revealing a narrow tunnel that led into the ancient sections of the complex. As energy blasts lit up the corridor behind them and the facility shook under Vectis's assault, they crawled into the darkness together. Behind them, the modern world of oppression and slavery burned. Ahead lay secrets that could change the galaxy. But first, they had to survive long enough to uncover them.